Let's begin at the beginning. In fact, I want to begin so far back, it's even before the time you joined the company, John. Ben, talk about that great problem-solving, decision-making discovery that you and Chuck are responsible for. How did it come about?
I really have to start at the RAND Corporation.
Okay.
And both Chuck Kepner and I were colleagues in a small research group in the RAND Corporation that was really studying the manual air defense system. And at that time, RAND was involved in trying to improve the effectiveness of the air defense system in the U.S. And we were studying how a group such as an air defense team processes information when they see various types of air threats. And RAND had developed a way of simulating various types of air threats, high-level attacks, low-level sneak attacks, and so forth. It's very much like a VCR today, except this was a huge black box and so on, which they shipped out to this station, which was in the middle of North Carolina. And so we were there for 6 months running this research, and we would run all different types of air threats. It'd maybe take 4 hours or so for these to unfold. And then we'd watch how the crews processed the information. And that was very exciting because the thing that struck us above all else was the tremendous difference in the commanding officer's ability to recognize a problem when it was occurring and then the decisions that they made.
Difference in terms of speed, in terms of the way they solved the problem, or made the decision?
Both. Differences in terms of how quickly they recognized that they were getting into trouble, and differences in what they decided to do about it. So the obvious conclusion was that there were tremendous differences here in terms of how they were processing the information, sort of using, the computer they had on their shoulder.
What was your research hypothesis? You left the RAND Corporation to investigate why it is that some problem solvers, some decision makers are more proficient than others. But what was the research hypothesis going out of RAND that you and Chuck wanted to test?
Well, we had a couple. One was that they were using some process which enabled some people to be better than others, some mental process for dealing with the information with which they were confronted. The other was that the more ability that a person had to articulate how they were making a decision, the better they would be. The research we did was really what you might call anthropological research. I mean, we were in the field talking to managers, having CEOs identify good decision makers, poor decision makers, interviewing them, trying to see what the differences were, sitting in on meetings, etc. And so that when we found out that there was no difference between those who had been identified as good and those who had been identified as poor in terms of their ability to articulate how they were going about it, we then came to the conclusion that if we could make people more consciously aware of the process they were using and of a good decision process, we could improve their performance. We could enable them to pass it on to someone else.
So John Zimmerman, I know you've spent the better part of your professional lifetime thinking about process, its definition, and its application. What is a process?
Well, I guess in my view, it's a sequential set of concepts or ideas that lead you efficiently from the need to reach a conclusion to reaching that conclusion. And that's basically, to me, what process is. And obviously, when you have a clear process, it raises questions that lead you to get the right information you need to reach the best conclusion.
So there is a kind of regular sequence to a process. That's part of it. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't think we can just talk about process in general, because there can be all kinds of processes.
All right, let's bring it down from a notch from the ladder of abstraction. The problem-solving and decision-making process. How was it that you discovered that there is, to use Jim's terminology, the sequence of steps. How did you discover that sequence of steps?
It wasn't very productive interviewing people and asking them, because that's where we found out almost immediately that they couldn't articulate that. We left Rand in June of 1958, and really were doing this research in fall of 58 through 59 into 1960, and through that period. So interviewing people wasn't very productive, but sitting in on meetings was very productive, because you could more easily see the sequence that people were using. The other thing that was really helpful, though, is we had really, at the same time we were doing this field research, we were developing a simple form of simulation, which would enable us to put people into a situation where we knew all of the information that was available in that situation. This was a 4-part exercise that we developed, and based on what we call the Apex Company. We found a fellow who was very, very interested in what we were doing, which was not generally true. I think most people could have cared less, you know. But this was a fellow named John Rubel, who was the vice president and general manager of the Hughes Aircraft Fire Control Laboratories. And he got very interested in what we were doing and would enable us to come in and talk to people and meet with them in the evening. And we started using this exercise to track what they were doing and observe the sequence of how they were doing things. The first thing that we found, which was really, you know, just seems sort of stupid now, but it was really rather a real revelation to us, was that there's a very different sequence of events involved in analyzing a problem where something is going wrong. Then we started to go into what is the sequence of events to really make for successful analysis of a situation where something's going wrong. What kind of information do you need? How do you need to deal with it to come to a conclusion as to why, you know, why your car doesn't run, or why this production line is broken, or whatever. The same thing with the decision making. What is the sequence of events and the kind of information that's needed to arrive at a sensible conclusion, a sensible decision?